Welcome back to another week of Hospo Happy Hour, brought to you by Hospo For Life and Warner's Distillery. I hope you all had a great weekend and are looking forward to a big week of mental health topics and special guests that are joining us on the show. Today's episode, we will be discussing finding your sense of purpose beyond your work with Derek Borrian, the CEO and founder of Altius Group, followed by Cristiano Beretta from the Barrel House Group for Last Drinks. Let's get Monday started. Up for the first round today, we have Derek Borrian, the CEO and founder of the Altius Group here in Sydney. Welcome back to Hospo Happy Hour, Derek. How are you today?
Liam, great to be with you again. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Good stuff. So tell us, how can we find our sense of purpose beyond our work?
Yeah, it's a big topic, this one, Liam. So obviously, obviously many people spend their lives looking for their sense of purpose. And I know it's obviously a real challenge when what we've done day to day is dragged away from us. And that's obviously something that the hospo industry is experiencing in a large scale at the moment. So hopefully through today, we'll understand a little bit more, some practical steps that you can take. But look, when we talk about a sense of purpose, we're talking about something that's fulfilling, something that gives us a motivation, obviously, to do what we do as individuals. And it's really important to understand, I think, that we're not talking about something that's fleeting in concept like happiness. We're actually talking about something that's more sustainable, something that kind of gives us more lasting satisfaction beyond those moments that are sort of transient. They come and go, and happiness is one of those things that's kind of hard to grab onto the whole time and keep a hold of. Whereas a sense of purpose is something that sustains us for much longer than that and actually gives us a motivation that's beyond those fleeting moments that we might get with happiness. So I'm going to draw on a few different things today. Draw on a lot of the work of a guy called Viktor Frankl, who wrote an amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. So it's not a long book, which I always find books that aren't too long are great. But if anyone listening is interested in a read, it's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's a very widely available book and something that you might take some time to read. But it touches on a lot of things that we're talking about today. And there's other work that I'm going to touch on, like positive psychology work of Seligman and the like. But I think there's three key points before we really kick off to understand. One is that everyone has their own specific purpose to fulfill. So mine is different to yours. It's different to every other listener's purpose. And that can be quite a tough thing to get your head around, right? So it's really important to understand that we shouldn't end up wishing that that we do what other people do, or that what other people want us to do. You know, our purpose is our own. And, you know, if we start thinking about comparing, it's an incredibly unhealthy thing for us. And that's really challenging in an environment where, you know, we're maybe seeing other people thriving in circumstances where we're not, or we're comparing ourselves on social media, which is obviously really prevalent in our lives today, in unhealthy ways. So that's probably a key point. You know, everyone who's listening and you and I, we've got our own distinct and unique purpose. And, you know, again, conceptually, that's a pretty tough one to get your head around. The other is this concept of what happens when we're struggling, you know, and I think for many of the people online now, we might be struggling with a sense of purpose. We might be just struggling with life in general because of, you know, the factors that are outside our immediate influence that are influencing our reality at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
But, you know, I think one of the key things is there's hope in the struggle, and the struggle itself and the adversity that we're facing doesn't detract from the worth of our lives, the meaning of our lives. And you know, in fact, one of the things that happens for us to grow and to find purpose is through adversity. So the things that people are experiencing online today and the things that we experience in life that are tough are often the makings of us. And hindsight will show us that frequently. So don't be discouraged, if at all possible, by the fact that you're having a really tough time, the fact that there's a lot of adversity in your life and you're struggling perhaps and you're suffering, you know, with the experiences that you're being put through at the moment, you know, it doesn't mean your life ceases to have meaning. In fact, there's a big school of thought that thinks that actually, you know, progressing through suffering is actually an achievement. It's a human achievement, you know, and it's something we're all going to experience. If we haven't yet, and I'd be surprised if you haven't yet, we're all experiencing it. We're all experiencing it. So don't be discouraged by that. There's hope in that, and that's a really important piece of what we're talking about here. We want to talk about purpose. And the other key point when we talk about purpose is purpose can't just be found in contemplating or thinking about something or meditating on something. All great things, important things, but purpose is found in action. It's found in doing, and it's found in activity that's driven by an individual. And coming back to that first point, everyone's purpose is individual. It's a bit like the actions that drive you as an individual will be quite unique as well. It's not something that you'll find, your purpose is not something that you'll find just by contemplating or thinking about it. That might make more meaning for people that have found their purpose through the things they do, and it might be less meaningful if you're struggling to find your purpose, and so you're thinking, oh geez, I need to think about this a lot. We're going to touch on some practical steps to finding your purpose, and that's a great place to start, because you might be thinking, well, what the hell does all of that mean, right? What does it mean in practice? So maybe we can jump on and take a look at some practical steps to finding your life's purpose at this point in time. Look, for me, strength is an absolute fundamental, right? And I am constantly surprised, both through the work that I've done with individuals who have been struggling because of, you know, they're in vulnerable situations, or they're in situations that are beyond their immediate control. They don't know what they're good at, and the same I find with many of my team members, and that's something that part of the fundamental work we do with our team is everyone in our team understands what their strengths are. So if you're not really sure what you're good at, or you may be relying on what people tell you that you're good at, or you're really strong with, I'd really strongly suggest that you go online and you find there's some great questionnaires. Gallup's Strengths Finder is a fantastic questionnaire. It's been done by tens of millions of people. It's a very validated tool, and it comes up with your 5 key strengths and gives you another 5. But if you understand what your 5 key strengths are, wow, you get a lot of kind of pumps up your tires a little bit, gives you a lot of confidence in understanding that you do have strengths. They may not be immediately obvious to the people that you interact with, that you've worked with, or that you have relationships with, but they are your own. They are unique in the fact that they, in combination, they create a unique set of strengths together. And you'll find that you'll learn a lot about yourself by identifying what those strengths are. And clearly, when you understand what your strengths are, you might be better aligned to finding what your purpose is and how you bring those strengths to life. And I think that's one of the struggles that many people have is, I'm not really sure what I'm good at, not sure what I'd be good at doing. And therefore people sort of start to contemplate or meditate on things without sufficient, direction around that. Strengths is a super good place to start. Liam, do you know what your strengths are?
I think my strengths are, trying to find positives in things, and really utilizing skills that I do have, and that which obviously turn into strengths that you have, to be able to offer yourself across other projects or things that you might not have tried before, but you've got those strengths and you can do it. And that's
a great one. I mean, positivity is one of the key strengths in Gallup. And it's one of mine, so we probably share the same one, mate. So there you go. But look, strengths is a super place to start. The next thing to sort of think about is this concept of flow. And again, we talk about positive psychology, and some of the work done in positive psychology talks about this concept of flow. And a couple of simple ways of thinking about when you are in flow is when you're engaged in something or interested in something or curious about something, and time seems to kind of disappear or ebb away. So you're quite immersed in it. You might be a little bit stressed, but not overly stressed. It's kind of a nice state of alertness, if you like, and a comfortable tension that you get. And it's a time also when you tend to kind of forget yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Liam, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but maybe when you're cooking or you're pursuing maybe your pursuit of flying or something like that, there are moments when you actually feel quite in flow.
Big time, 100%. I was just about to say that, and that. So whether it is private dining and cooking for our clients, which it just comes, and before you know it, you're looking at the clock, going, oh, it's time to go. And completely lost in that. Same as my other studies in aviation, it's exactly the same. There is a healthy stress behind it. We're going, oh, I've got to get this done, or I have to do this, or I have to learn this by next week. But once you're involved, and engaged in it, you literally forget about everything else.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? And I'm sure, again, if you're tuning in, there'd be things that you do in your life or that you have done in your life that create that sense around you. And you'll know exactly what we're talking about here, that sense where time sort of disappears and you're just immersed in what you're doing. And the key part about that is you can't actually forget about yourself. And, that's a wonderful state. And usually you become focused on being of service to something or someone else. So that's a really interesting one. And I know in the hospitality industry, this concept of being of service to someone else is obviously going to be a pretty fundamental driver of a lot of the people who work in that industry. So that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful piece of purpose in action, really. The next thing to think about, and so we're sort of going through a bit of a hierarchy here, or a filter, if you like, of how you can arrive at understanding, more deeply what your sense of purpose is. And the next one is to think about this concept of love, and what this means to you in practice. It usually relates to our connectedness to other living beings, usually humans, but sometimes or also animals. And what sort of sentiments that concept of love tends to bring up for you, and how you associate love. So again, if you think in terms of a particular individual in your life, what is it about that individual, or what is it about how that individual makes you feel, perhaps, that creates an uplift or creates joy for you? Now, again, that becomes quite important, because as we start to filter our purpose, we start towards our purpose, we start to also understand how things make us feel. And how things make us feel is actually really, really important. So, of course, there are people who, and there's that saying, if you do a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That's great, and that's true for many people, or for some people. But there's also parts of everyone's job that they don't love. And so
I've been one to say it for years, and you get sometimes where you really don't love it at all.
Well, that's true, and I think that's true regardless of how purpose orientated you are in your work. So, but this as we filter through this concept of purpose and getting to a place where we identify with a purpose, you know, love is fundamental to that. You know, understanding what creates that joy and connection for us is really critical.
Yeah.
And then we sort of move on to the next two concepts, which are quite critical as well. And the next one is energy. So what are the things, or when do you feel most energized, most motivated, most alive? You know, what are the things that you don't need to set an alarm clock for? You just know, because they're so prioritized in your head that you're going to do them regardless of whether someone's reminding you or not.
Yeah.
You don't need to be asked twice to do them.
Motivation.
Yeah, so there's this sort of intrinsic motivation for you, and you know that could be in any. And you know, I've worked with a lot of different people, and you know, one gentleman, and this is true of many of the people I worked with. One gentleman would wake up routinely at 3 a.m. every morning. He had a job driving heavy equipment. He had a long drive to get to that equipment every morning, and then he'd start his job, and he was usually covered neck to toe in grease by the end of the day, dirt and grease and grime, and he'd go home. And he said he never set an alarm clock, and he was always so happy to be doing what he did. And he'd look around at people in suits, and he'd think, "Geez, I'm so happy. I'm in my my workwear neck to toe in dust and dirt and grease." And the reason that made him happy was that it provided for his family. So his motivation, his purpose was to create a life for his family. And so the work that he did was a means to that. And so he was quite grateful for that. He was happy for that. And that was his key driver. That's what got him out of bed in the morning. So so there could be, and there will be in everyone's life, something that they don't need to be asked twice to do, or they don't need to, they look for the opportunities to do that. And it could be a hobby or a pursuit of some sort that isn't work. And within that hobby or pursuit, and if it's reading, for example, some people think, oh, well, I just love sitting back and reading. That's the only thing that really just gives me joy. Sure, there's an escape component of that, which is that takes us away from our perhaps reality. But what is it that we're perhaps inclined to read? What are the things that the subject matters maybe that we're inclined to read, and what links can we draw from that into what brings us joy in our lives? And then we talk about TV and those sorts of things. We tend to sort of move into things that are below conscious thinking, and when we're in sort of below conscious thinking, where we're awake and we're not in a meditative state, there's not a lot happening for us in terms of creativity or problem solving in our own minds. So probably not a lot to be gained from that. Sure, you can take time out from doing that, but it's a bit like scrolling through a social media post. There's not a lot of joy or benefit that you're going to gain from doing that. So this comes back to, I guess, one of the earlier points was that there is a requirement to take action for purpose to be realised. And then the sort of next point to think about is this kind of concept of legacy, or another way of putting it is, you know, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want to be remembered for? You know, if you had to, you know, write your own, there's also this exercise where you write your own obituary, you know, and you think about what are the things you'd like people to say about you when you're no longer around, you know, and to literally have, you know, the opportunity then to sort of work towards that on a regular basis. That tends to strip away a lot of the noise that goes on in our daily lives around what we should be doing, what other people want us to do, what we see other people doing that we think we like. When we actually come down to this really core concept of what's important to us as individuals, what's important to us as unique beings, what are our drivers on a personal level, what energizes us, makes us feel a strong connection, gives us this intrinsic sort of motivation. Often it'll be related to how we perceive how we want ourselves to be viewed in the world for what we've done, or how we've made people feel.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's a really great way of just stripping back the layers and saying, you know what, out of all the things I do in life, is this actually contributing to how I want to be remembered down the track? And when you do that, we probably find there's a ton of stuff in your life that's not that purposeful or purpose orientated, and that many of the things that you could be doing will help drive alignment to your purpose, and that typically falls in with your strengths and values as well.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a confronting way of looking at it, but it is it's an interesting way. And, you know, one of the things that happens with this huge disruption that we've experienced of late is that it creates an opportunity for that time and space. And so we can look at the adversity that's created by COVID and the factors in our industry sort of changing and disappearing in front of our eyes in some instances, or morphing and transforming. It is a transformative process. Lots of adversity, but huge amounts of growth and realignment can occur during these times. And that's
great to see that businesses have, you know, and that how they have changed, but, you know, it's been more about, you know, what can we do than what can't we do.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, this series is a great example, Liam. You know, how did this series come about? It's come about through the adversity that the industry's facing, and people lining up behind that and saying, you know what, we can do something to shape people's health and well-being in hospitality down the track, right now and down the track as well.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's a good coverage of information for the first round today.
Yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? I mean, you know, people spend their lives pursuing their purpose, and I've given you the sort of 20-minute summary, but hopefully some good starting points for you and the listeners, and just a chance to sort of take some of this away and apply it, and look for those gaps that you can start to make an entry point into realizing that, if you haven't already.
No, definitely. Well, that's all we have time for today on the first round. Derek will be back to join us for your shout, where you at home can have your say. We'll see you all soon. Thanks, Derek.
Cheers. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Liam.
So we're back for another week of your shout, where you can send us your questions either by email to info@hospoforlife.com.au or send us a direct message for our professionals to answer. Our first question comes from a viewer in Perth today. Since losing my job, I feel like I'm stuck in a never-ending cycle of grief. What can I do to cope with this change more positively and help break the cycle?
Yeah, look, Liam, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And I think firstly, there's probably an understanding, or an importance to understand that there are stages of grief that people go through, and in the early stages, it's quite hard to do much. You know, grief is a process. So we sort of move along a continuum in the grief process, and you know, wherever that questions come from, you know, we really need to define where you're sitting on the moment on that continuum and through those stages of grief. But what I would say is, how do you move out of that is probably the key part, I think, of that, where that question's coming from. And it's understanding, I think, it's looking for the sliver of light. It's looking for this little piece of your life that's giving you just a little bit of light at the moment, and then expanding on that. Yeah. And that might be, and look, typically that falls into, you know, one of those categories of well-being that we talk about. It might be physical well-being, it might be mental well-being, social well-being, or otherwise. And so when we think about where those slivers will lie, they'll usually lie somewhere in maybe it's physical movement that's going to give that person a little bit of light each day. If that's what it is, then expanding that out a little bit more, maybe doing a bit more physical movement, maybe doing some different physical movement, maybe doing that movement in different locations, and building on that, and just allowing that to be sort of pursued. If it's social, it might just be that, you know, you get a little bit of joy talking to a friend who's experiencing something similar, or has experienced something similar, or is in a completely different industry. Whatever type of connection that might be socially. Again, just looking at where that sliver of light comes in that day for you and expanding on it. So maybe spending time with a couple of other friends during the day, if at all possible. So look, I guess you could be reassured that grief is a process through which you move, and you do have to go through the stages, and they do vary from individual to individual. Key is not to get stuck in any one stage. Key is to build out where the light shines a little bit for you each day. And if you're really obviously struggling for longer than you feels right, then obviously consulting someone and touching base with an expert to really check in and make sure you're doing okay is really critical.
Yeah, no, good one. That's some good advice. Next on the list comes from a viewer in Sydney. How can we break the stigma behind mental health illness?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, stigma tends to come from, you know, fear of the unknown. Often people think, oh, you know, people fear what they don't know enough about. And I think, you know, breaking down stigma is about understanding more about the particular topic. And in this case, mental health. You know, what we know about mental health is most of us will have, you know, episodes or situations where we're mentally unwell for periods of time, and that will impact on everyone's life. So it's a shared experience, right? No one's immune from it, and most people will experiencing it to quite severe degrees during their lives, at some stage or another. So that's the first part. You know, this is not unique. This is not, you know, you're not special. everyone's gonna experience some sort of mental ill health at some stage in their lives. And the other way I think that we help break down stigma is by storytelling and information sharing. So as you're doing through Hospo For Life, Liam, you know, these are the sorts of things that help people understand the concept of mental health, break down the unknowns, and you know, the sort of concept of what places fear in people's minds about mental health.
Yeah.
And actually helps them understand it. And I think when people understand more about a subject or something they don't know about, the fear tends to reside a little bit and become less prevalent. The knowledge goes up, and therefore the stigma sort of dissolves away at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's certainly getting a lot better across the industry from where it might have been maybe, you know, 20 years ago, from going, oh, what's up with him today in the corner, and that, as opposed to, oh, you sure you're all right, and that, and actually giving it a little bit more importance.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and we're seeing it. You know, there's this sort of other concept where if you know better, you can do better, and I think there's more people that know better now, and so, you know, we're in a position to do better around mental health and making sure it's not stigmatized and that people are supported where they need it.
Yeah, no, good one. Well, that ends your shout for another day. Send us your questions to be answered on the show. Big thanks to Derek, and catch you all tomorrow.
See you all. Thanks.
Up for last drinks today, we have very special guest, Cristiano Beretta, the Assistant Manager of the Barbershop and Head of Training of the Barbershop in Duke of Clarence here in Sydney. Cristiano, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much, Liam. Hi, everybody. We're having good fun.
No, thanks for joining us. So I've got a few questions to kick off the week and ask you. What are you missing most about right now with everything closed? I know you guys are still open with the Barbershop in Duke of Clarence, but closed for patrons. How's it affecting you?
Well, mentally, it took a little bit to get used to it. Obviously, you know, breaking down the routine to go to work every day, and I think that the main thing that the issue is the actual interaction with our patrons, and you know, my work colleagues you know, something that you see every time. You know, obviously being sitting at home is not that great. Try always to be connected to people. That's what keeps us a little bit, you know, like we social animals, so we need that interaction daily. So that's probably the hardest thing that do these days is, you know, try to keep in contact with people daily. So, but as I said, we're pretty lucky that we still trading a little bit. So colleagues at least twice.
No, I get it. It's affecting all of us right now with COVID, and that we're seeing obviously, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people that have been affected. But how's it really affected yourself and especially your friends who work in the bar scene?
Well, personally, it did affect me pretty hard, especially because I'm Italian, coming from the north of Italy. My family is still living there. My brother got affected by the virus. Luckily, he's free of that now, so he's all safe in town. But, you know, like I lost few relatives and few people that I knew in town, so that was pretty hard. Now everything is getting better there. Everyone is safe, so I feel way more relaxed. First 2 weeks, it was pretty tragic, especially because it was the same time where we had to close as well. So I was without job. You know, stuck in here, not knowing what is going to happen. Now, bit by bit, I got used to it. You know, I said we traded a little bit, so I got a little bit of income coming in. Government helping out a little bit somehow, and so things are looking up and getting more and more positive, which is great. In terms of our bar scene, you know, like all the bars are closed. A lot of friends that they're not Australian, so international, they either had to fly home, if they could fly home, so they had to live the life they were living over here. You know, students, they struggle because they don't have any meaning or income, so money coming in as well. So it is pretty tough. We try to, you know, stay together, try to help each other out when we can. It's gonna be a totally different scene once we reopen. Hopefully, it's not gonna be too far off. But it will be tough time.
Totally hear. It's been a total change for everybody. I honestly hope we don't have to go through anything like this again. Not in my lifetime, anyhow.
Once is enough.
Big time. So we've just discussing. You developed some great initiatives for the barbershop and Duke of Clarence. Can you tell us a bit about those and what you've got going on at the moment?
Absolutely. We started with the Duke of Clarence, so we always did the Sunday roast. Obviously now, as many, probably most of the venues, that we had to reinvent ourselves and figure a different angle how to operate. So for us, it was, you know, sitting down with the management and figure out how to carry on doing it. Obviously, having a kitchen and doing Sunday roast, we decided to do delivery. So we got our chef cooking it. We get all the orders in by Saturday. On midday, chef cookies, and then Sunday we get most of our staff. They have a card and a driver license to go around and deliver all the food. So we actually not using other people to do the job that we can do it ourselves. You know, obviously we can get our staff on a few hours and, you know, get some money to carry on surviving, and that gives you also a bit of a hope, because you see things improving and, you know, things starting. You just don't sit down and wait to see what happens. You know what I mean? So we're doing that every Sundays. There's been a great response. We've been doing it for the last 3 weeks. On the pipeline, we got another couple of things for the Duke of Clarence. One's being the Scotch Eggs Club. So different Scotch eggs and whiskey flights. We will obviously have a Zoom meeting with whoever has a whiskey flight, and we will go through the different kind of whiskeys they're having and have a little chat, a little masterclass and stuff like that. Then curry night, that's another thing we got on the pipeline. We did it we just started actually doing it on a Wednesday before all these things happened. So
Yeah.
we had a pretty good response. So we would like to try again and see if we do it, if it works.
Yeah.
Doing the same system, so deliveries being delivered by us. So as I said, on Sunday it's been good because we got more and more people reordering. So we have this kind of connection. We always got the same people deliver the same person the orders. So we start having that kind of interaction with our patron, even if we can't physically do it. But that's been good. We will launch the barbershop gin shop.
Yeah.
Where you'll be able to buy our cocktails, gin flies, bottle of gin, and you're gonna get a free case of tonic with it. So that is bit by bit, we try to sort it out, a few new things, and see how that goes.
Yeah, good stuff. It's good to see people still, doing something at this point in time, and that you're still surviving. And that's the main thing. And I guess it's something that will bring us a lot closer to our patrons, when everything goes back to normal as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, just to keep that, interaction, the human contact as possible, obviously with distance. But yeah, man, I mean, so far it's working, and there's something to look forward to. So
yeah, it's brilliant. What encouragement can you give to our viewers to look forward to for the future?
Oh, wow.
Get your crystal ball out.
Don't really know what to expect in the future. I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment to feel more focused and look forward to it, is just to be able to only focus on what I can control.
Yeah.
And not much of what anything else is around me that I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
It makes my life easier. My focus is only what I physically can do to get better.
Yeah.
And to feel better. For example, for my staff, I keep doing training every 2 weeks, and I always say, keep learning. You got plenty of things to do. You got your platform with Ananas and Jerry's. I got work to do, so I do my own training for my staff.
Yeah.
And that keeps me focused on that. Once we reopen, we will be stronger than when we left. So because we can use this time to, learn new things, pick up things that you forgot. There's a lot of things that we can do now positively to get out of this in a better way. So,
it's definitely a good time to retrain ourselves or learn something new. Even teaching ourselves a new skill at home whilst waiting to reopen or go back to work again. It's a great opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you need to keep yourself trained and ready to go, because you never know. In 2 weeks we might be ready, and you don't want to be left behind. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Because
exactly.
as I said, a lot of people had to leave the industry and do other things. People that will come back, they need to be stronger. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get another job. So
yeah, and I agree with that. I think there'll be a lot fewer jobs once everything does go back, but I think the quality will be a lot higher.
Well, yeah, but that's why you need to be on top of things.
Yeah.
To be ready to go. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Well, thanks for joining us on the show today, Cristiano. And I hope you have a great week.
Oh, yeah. Well, you too, guys. And especially to you, Liam. All right, take care. Thank you very much.
Rock on, mate. Have a good week. That's all we have time for on today's show. You can catch us back here at 5 p.m. tomorrow for another great topic and special guest Joshua Mason, chef and restaurateur for Last Drinks. Big thanks to our partners Warner's Gin and Altius Group for supporting the show. Stay strong and stay united in spirit to create a positive change for a healthier industry. I'm Chef Liam Crawley. Have a good night.